This is Storybook Radio.
Derrick sat, unease, on his worn-out couch. The cell phone in his hand flashed a devious email notification. Your debit card has declined. His head throbbed, his stomach twisted. Outside, the low rumble of an engine sent a chill down his spine. He leapt to the window. No, not today. A tow truck rolled into his driveway, its flashing amber lights cutting through the dusk. A husky man in a navy jumpsuit stepped out, clipboard in hand, and headed straight for Derrick's truck. Derrick threw open the door, bolting outside. Wait, please, just a few more days. The driver barely spared him a glance. Sorry, buddy, orders are orders. Desperation clawed at Derrick's chest. I'll have the money soon, I swear. I just need more time. You're already overdue. You need to pay $900 to get it back. $900? He might as well need $1 million. He had borrowed from his brother, his cousin, and 2 close friends. Over $2,000 he already owed. The pawn shops had taken everything. His television, laptop, tablet, even his father's old watch. As his truck was lifted onto the bed, chained, then driven away, Derrick stood in his driveway, hands gripping his hair. Think, Derrick, think. His eyes drifted toward the backyard. His grandfather had never trusted banks, always stashing money in odd places. They used to joke about treasure being buried back there. Was it really a joke? Derrick stormed into the shed, yanking the door open so hard it nearly came off the hinges. The musty scent of old tools and rotting wood filled his nostrils. He rummaged through the clutter until his hands closed around a rusted shovel. The handle was rough, the metal blade dulled by time, but it would do. He stepped into the yard, the cool night air doing nothing to stop the sweat beading on his brow. The ground was firm, packed tight from years of neglect. With a deep breath, he drove the shovel into the earth. Thunk. The soil barely budged. He gritted his teeth and shoved harder, using his foot to press the blade down. The first scoop of dirt came loose, dry and crumbly. Shovel, toss, shovel, toss. His breathing grew heavy. His arms ached, but he didn't stop. His mind ran wild. What if he found an old stash of money? What if his grandfather had buried gold, valuables, anything? Then, clang. Derrick froze. His pulse thundered in his ears as he crouched down, brushing away the loose dirt with his fingers. His hands scraped against something solid. Not metal, not wood, something else. With frantic movements, he unearthed more of it. The shape became clearer, long, curved, decorated with gold trim and embedded with shimmering gems. It wasn't a box, it wasn't a safe, it was a sarcophagus. His first instinct was to step back, to cover it again. But then he thought about the money. Derrick fidgeted for his phone, with dirt caked on his palms. He called Marcus, his contact for underground deals. You found a what? Marcus asked groggily. A sarcophagus? In my backyard. Can you get a buyer? If it's real, I know someone who'll pay big. It seemed the minutes couldn't pass fast enough, but eventually they did. An hour later, Marcus arrived with his Ford pickup truck. They entered the backyard. They pried the sarcophagus open just enough to peek inside. The mummy was still intact, wrapped in aged linen, its face obscured. Marcus let out a low whistle. Damn, this is the real deal. They wrapped the sarcophagus in a tarp and heaved it onto the truck. Every second felt like they were doing something they shouldn't. But Derrick didn't care. He needed the money. They met the buyer in a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of town. The elder man's sharp eyes inspected every inch of the sarcophagus, his fingers running over the intricate carvings. This piece, the buyer said, voice low and reverent, is worth far more than you realize. Derrick swallowed hard. How much are you offering? The man smiled. I'll give you $5 million. Derrick's breath hitched. You serious? I don't deal in cash, the man said, reaching into his coat. He produced a sleek black checkbook and, with a smooth stroke of his pen, scrawled out a check for $5 million. Derrick took it, hands shaking. It was real. As he and Marcus walked away, Derrick exhaled, his body light with relief. It was over. That night, the first message appeared. As Derrick stepped out of the shower, steam fogging the mirror, words appeared in the condensation. Put it back! He flinched, whamming his knee into the sink's base drawer. He smushed the bath towel against the mirror until it cracked, before killing the lights and slamming the door shut. Later that night, Derrick lay sprawled across his king-size bed, cocooned in silk sheets that still smelled faintly of fresh packaging. The dim glow from his bedside clock read 2:47 a.m. He had barely slept, tossing and turning, his mind replaying the events of the past few days like a broken reel. Then his phone rang. The sudden sound sent a bolt of fear through his chest. He shot up, blinking against the darkness, his heart hammering. The screen glowed with an unknown number. His fingers hesitated over the screen before he answered. "Hello?" Silence. His stomach nodded. Static crackled faintly on the other end, like the whisper of a distant sandstorm. Then, beneath the static, something stirred. A voice, low, hoarse, ancient. A single word crawled from the receiver, slow and deliberate. "Return it." Derrick's breath hitched. Then the line went dead. He sat frozen, gripping the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. His skin prickled with unease, his mind racing for a rational explanation. A prank? A bad connection? But deep down, he knew. It had followed him. Derrick turned in bed. The cold air pressed against his skin. The damp scent of dust and decay clogged his lungs. He opened his eyes to find himself in a stone corridor, ancient and endless. The walls covered in hieroglyphs that pulsed like a heartbeat. The flickering glow of unseen torches cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. He turned, searching for an exit, but behind him the darkness stirred. A figure emerged, tall, wrapped in rotting linen, eyes burning with an unnatural glow. The mummy. Derrick's stomach dropped. He tried to move, but his legs felt rooted to the ground. His breath came in short, shallow gasps as the creature stepped forward. The sound of its movement sent a ripple of nausea through him, the dry rustling of linen, the sickening creak of old, brittle joints. Then, suddenly, the mummy lunged. Its fingers closed around his throat, withered yet impossibly strong. Derrick thrashed, his screams trapped in his chest. He clawed at the bandage grip, his nails tearing at fabric, and something solid beneath, something ancient and unyielding. The world around him shifted. The ground cracked beneath his feet, and suddenly he was falling. Dirt exploded around him, filling his mouth, his nose, his lungs. He was sinking, drowning in dry, suffocating sand. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank, the mummy's burning gaze never leaving him as it loomed above, watching, waiting. Derrick's mouth stretched open in a silent, airless scream. Then he woke up. His body lurched upright, drenched in sweat. His chest heaved, his throat raw as if he really had been choking on dust. His bedroom was dark, too dark, and the air was different. Days passed, and Derrick became more erratic. On one particular night, a neighbor saw him standing outside his house, motionless, staring at the moon. The next morning, he was gone. Weeks passed by, and Marcus drove past Derrick's oldest house on a Sunday evening. The place had been dark and abandoned for months, but tonight the porch lights were on. Marcus licked his bottom lip, slowing his truck. Who lives there now? His stomach twisted. Something told him to keep driving and mind his own business. But he had convinced himself that it was only 6 p.m., and he needed a few answers. He parked at the curb, got out peering over his shoulders, then walked up the steps. He knocked once, then twice. Footsteps. The door creaked open. A man stood in the doorway. Not Derrick, a stranger. His skin was bronzed, weathered, almost too perfect. His black hair was thick and curled, dusted with something gray. His jaw was sharp. He had striking features, but his presence was unnerving. It was his big eyes that made Marcus's blood run cold. They were fogged with gray, ancient, far older than the face that wore them. The man smiled slightly. "Can I help?" Marcus swallowed, trying to steady himself. Sorry. I was looking for a man named Derrick." The man's lips curled, almost amused. "Derrick, he doesn't live here anymore." Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. "Where did he go?" The man leaned against the doorframe, stretching his fingers, like testing out a body he hadn't used in a long time. "I wouldn't know. I bought the house last week." Marcus's gaze drifted past the man, into the dimly lit living room, and then he saw it. The sarcophagus. Standing upright in the corner of the room, its golden surface gleamed in the light. But next to it, on a marble pedestal, lay a mummified body, wrapped in fresh linen. The bindings looked new, untouched by time, but it wasn't just any mummy. It was Derrick. His face, gaunt and withered, peered lifelessly through the wrappings. His hands, now nothing more than dried husks, were crossed over his chest. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The real Derrick was dead. The mummy had taken his place, and now he was standing in Derrick's home, living Derrick's life. Marcus's body moved before his mind caught up. He stumbled back, his face pale. I should go. The man's smile widened. Already? But we were just getting to know each other. Marcus turned and ran, nearly tripping down the steps. He jumped into his truck, peeling away from the house. In the rearview mirror, he saw the new owner standing at the door, watching, smiling, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for centuries. Marcus pressed the gas pedal harder. He didn't know what that man was, but he knew one thing for sure. Derrick was never coming back.